Hey guys. Okay, this is awkward. So, it's January 2025. It's almost February, but please ignore that. Happy New Year, everyone. I'm very late on this. I hope that your 2024 went well. It's actually been a really wonderful and eye-opening, mind-opening, mind-bending film watching year for me personally. I've seen so many films that I'm so glad that I have seen now. So as a cinephile, you can see from my hoodie, movies and stories, they're my favorite things to talk about. Every single year I would make these lists. Every single time I watch something that I haven't seen before, I would just list it. And then at the end of the year, I would make a video that is too long where I just ramble on and on and on about all of these new movies that I've seen. Drumroll please. I watched 74 new films and TV shows that I haven't seen before in the last year. I also discovered Letterboxd. You can follow me on there if you want. So hence, for this video, I'm going to talk about most of the films I watched in 2024 along with my Letterboxd stats. The first film I watched in 2024 was not new for me. Lord of the Rings, The Fellowship of the Ring. So like the last day of 2023, I stayed up because I wanted to transition into 2024 with that film. I guess my superstitious self wanted it to bring me some kind of like good fortune or something. So something notable is I've recorded my countdown to 2024, and as the clock struck 12 a.m., Frodo fell, which was not really a good omen, but it was just quite funny to me. And then the last film I watched in 2024 was Gladiator. It's literally a perfect film, guys. The story is so like succinct. There's no like fluff. There's no like filler. It's just such a coherent and well-told, well-structured story. Every single character were so compelling. I listened to An Hour of Free like every single day of December, basically. And then the cinematography, beautiful. The recurring imageries of like the wheat field and also Maximus's like figurines of his family. That was so sweet. And also how Juba, oh my god, I love Juba. How Juba like oh, this is kind of a spoiler, so. Okay, but one thing, I have to ramble on about this. Lucilla deserved so much better. Well, I guess every single woman at that time deserved much better, and also Maximus. Every single character deserved much better, except for Commodus, and you know. But she, like, I just feel like Rome just doesn't deserve Lucilla. Like, she literally had to watch all these people fight, all her loved ones fight to the death in the Colosseum, and then she went to this. So anyway, after all that, I'm just so proud of what my first film and last film of 2024 were with LOTR and then Gladiator. It's like such a wonderful way to bookend this year with epics. And speaking of epics, according to Letterboxd, my most watched theme or genre of films in the previous year was adventure. And my most watched nano-genre was superheroes and action-packed battles with villains. And I get where it's coming from, because here's also what I've watched in 2024. But I guess my favorite, like, epic sort of film I watched in last year was, of course, Doom Part 2. And I have to elaborate on that. So, I loved Doom Part 1. I actually reread the first Doom book to prepare for Doom Part 2. I don't usually reread books that often, but my love for Dune is it's so weird. It like came from nowhere. I'm actually using Dune to like balance my camera right now. It's like right below my camera. I could not be more excited for Doom Part 2 because I was just so eager to see how they would adapt all these like really abstract scenes that happen at the second part of the book, like the water of life scenes and also like Paul's prescience. It's so rich with like internal monologues, and their thoughts are also always really, really prominent, and there's like a lot of imageries and their thoughts as well in the book. So I was just really curious how Denis would like adapt that onto the silver screen. Doom Part 2 did what I wanted to do and so much more. I watched it in IMAX and it was a wonderful, spectacular experience, and I'm excited for Doom Messiah. I have not read the book. I started it once, and then I sort of got weirded out, so I just DNF'd it. But I am going to pick it up again before the film gets released, before Messiah gets released. But let's just talk about how snubbed Dune was at the Oscars nominations, okay? I haven't seen most of the Best Picture and the most nominated films of 2024 yet, but I just know that Dune at least deserves to be. Anyway, the past is in the past. Decisions are made, and it's okay. Dune, we have a strong Letterboxd following. We love Dune. Okay, so as you saw from my like epic films collection. I also watched and rewatched a lot of franchises in 2024. I finally watched the Star Wars franchise. So I made a whole entire video on Star Wars, 40 minutes of me rambling about Star Wars. If you want to check that out, please do, because I spent so much time writing the script for that video and then filming it and then editing it. So I really hope that you can maybe... Basically, my film teacher recommended it again and again, and I finally succumbed and I watched it. And I loved it. And so, this is gonna be so random, but since Harrison Ford was in Star Wars, playing Han Solo, and he was pretty good in it, I started watching Indiana Jones. Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade. Yeah, that was my favorite one, where he had the adventure with his father. The fourth one took me 4 sittings to finish. And I guess you can imagine why, if you've seen that. But if you have not, then let this be a warning, I guess. And this is not new for me, but I also rewatched my favorite franchise of all time, Harry Potter. It just brought me back to the magic of childhood and just reminded me of how much I loved Harry Potter and how much I believed in magic, I guess. In terms of 2024 new releases, there's been a couple of fun ones. The Fall Guy, which I watched twice. The stunt industry is something that really fascinates me. And then Inside Out 2, I feel like it was a really successful sequel. I really loved it. New emotions that were added, they were so accurate as a teenager myself, like anxiety. I feel that all the time. And I see parts of myself in Riley a lot. Particularly her obsession with Val.
Relatable.
And yeah, I literally felt like I was back in 2015. I was back as my little 7-year-old self watching that. But at the same time, like, I was just me. Like, it captured the messiness and joy and sadness and all that being a teenager as well. So I loved it. I feel like people are forgetting about it. And then towards the end of the year, I watched Wicked. I love the character of Elphaba. She's my favorite character. And then Glinda. Glinda is iconic. Like, I don't really like Glinda. I don't know if that's a unpopular opinion, but editing Jill here. I don't know why I didn't say it when I was filming the video, but what I meant was that I did not know if that was an unpopular opinion. I know that there's still things that she has to understand, and she comes from a really privileged background, so it makes sense how she was acting, I guess. But her attitudes at the beginning, at least, was just, I don't find that cute. But the dance sequence at Ozda's, that was just, I almost cried watching that. That was so moving. I eventually liked the relationship between Glinda and Elfie. I sort of shipped them a little. And like, when they were singing this, like, the loathing, like, what is this feeling, when they were, like, spending their first days together in their dorm, when they started talking about, like, they had a feeling, like, what is this feeling, I literally thought it was going to be love, or, like, yearning.
Or, like, longing.
And Michelle Yeoh was a mother. And I also watched a bunch of documentaries last year, so as for the 2024 documentaries, new releases that I watched, I Am Celine Dion. Such a powerful documentary. I've been a fan of Celine since 2022. She's just such a role model for me. So the documentary follows her as she battles her condition, like the stiff person syndrome. It just documents her sort of life and how she coped with not being able to sing as she did before, and just her dealing with her, like, internal conflicts and all that. And this is really, really, really bittersweet. It was not an easy watch, but after finishing it, I love and appreciate Celine even more. And I'm so grateful for getting to love and sing, aka scream, her songs every single day, and for this documentary. There was one thing what she said in the documentary, like, she compared herself to an apple tree, and she didn't want fans to line up in front of her if she didn't have any apples to offer. And then I saw this comment on Twitter, on X, where a fan was like, but we're not here for the apples, we're here for the tree. And I just hope that by putting out this documentary and seeing people's reaction, that she understands that we love her for what she is. Like, she is a magical human being. Just as she sang so beautifully and tenderly for Love Again, the sun will rise again and storms will subside again. We also have another documentary about an artist, about music, which is the music of John Williams. So John Williams, of course, one of my favorite film composers of all time. He is the soundtrack of my childhood. The documentary itself, I feel like it just meets all the standards of, how a documentary looks like, but I feel like, honestly, it did not really go beyond that. It's just pretty contained within the limits of, like, okay, so here's his work, here's who he is, here's a bit of background about his life, his childhood and all that. Like the documentary itself is okay, but of course, John Williams, like a mountain of a person. What? And then I also watched a Chinese documentary about the sinking of the Lisbon Maru. Okay, so basically, if you're unfamiliar with this part of history as I was, the Lisbon Maru, it was a ship that the Japanese used to transport British prisoners of war from Hong Kong to Japan. It was torpedoed by a U.S. submarine while it was on its journey. So the Lisbon Maru, it started to sink. As it was sinking, the location of the Lisbon Maru, it was really close to a coastal village in China. So like the fishermen of the island, they actually decided to rescue these POWs who were stranded at sea. It was a historical event that really captured the humanity of humanity and how sometimes humanity can really push through in the midst of inhumanity, you know. This filmmaker and this like scientist, I think he set out to like interview those that have been affected by this event. I really appreciate how he really tried to obtain information and ideas from like all perspectives of all sides, if you will, that has been involved and influenced by this event. From a filmmaking standpoint, the director Fang Li, he didn't have like an abundance of technical support, and like some parts of the animation of visually presenting the history was not personally appealing to me, but I just really appreciate his efforts. And also watched Orlando Bloom's documentary To the Edge, where he attempted 3 like really extreme activities: skydiving, freediving, I think that's called, and also rock climbing. And it's just Orlando Bloom, so if you know, you know.
My favorite character of all time, and also the actor as well, Will Turner. Ignore the fact that he is like insanely handsome. This actually looks like Orlando, so yeah, when he shoots arrows, the whole world stopped working.
It was just fun seeing him attempt all these things, how he's so passionate about these things, you know, just the zest he has towards a life. And I do really get how he said that he felt really alive when he was pushing these limits. You know, that sort of irony of feeling all the more alive when your life is on the edge was pretty gripping. And then also I actually watched some culinary documentaries. So I watched Chef's Table, the noodle episode, because my favorite food in the world, guys, noodles, especially noodles from CN. And I also watched a Korean reality drama, called Culinary Class Wars. It was basically like a bunch of like professional and amateur chefs compete for the best chef, I guess, position. I don't usually watch reality TV, but when I do, I get pretty obsessed, and this was one of the instances. Okay, so long story short, I can sometimes be pretty actor-driven. Honestly, sometimes I would watch films just because I want to see that particular person in it, even though I might not like the premise or like the genre or like the story line of the film at all. I would just watch it for a person, which is kind of ridiculous, but I will grow out of this eventually. I will, but just not in 2024. So my most watched actress in 2024 was Daisy Ridley. It sort of stemmed from Star Wars, the Star Wars sequels. After I watched Star Wars, I decided to watch more Daisy Ridley films, and also because Young Woman in the Sea came out, and after I watched that, I was just like, So Young Woman in the Sea, I made a video on that. It's truly such a heartwarming story, and one that I'm so glad that I'm aware of now. I was just really inspired by Trudy, such a trailblazing woman, and she's just, her resilience, determination, and her optimism, they just really shine through. Another Daisy film I watched was Sometimes I Think About Dying, a very different dynamic than Young Woman in the Sea, but just as powerful, I guess. So it's basically about this office worker, Fran, who's an introvert. She has social anxiety, she has trouble like really connecting and communicating with other people, and it was just about how her world and her life changed as a new person came into their office, a new coworker. The overall style of the film is pretty experimental, I guess. There are some unconventional imageries. Of course, as the title suggests, Sometimes I Think About Dying. There are some imageries that can be a little disturbing and unsettling, but also really powerful, and I feel like it really depicts Fran's mental state really well. And it was just one of those really quiet, almost silent films that emulate this kind of like profoundness. So yeah, as a person with lots of social insecurities, Fran was such a relatable character. Even though I found the pacing of this film personally a little slow initially, I eventually got used to its rhythm, because when I looked back at the movie as a whole, it moves like Fran's daily life. The really stylized scenes of Fran's imagination and also the beautiful mundanity of the small town of Oregon really miraculously fits well together, which creates this overall imagery that emanates the character of Fran. But at the end of the day, all that said, there was a particular moment where Robert, the new character, gets to spend a night with Fran watching movies on the sofa. Can Robert be me, please? And I also watched Chaos Walking, which we're not going to really elaborate on. And I also watched Magpie, which also came out last year. It's a thriller. Daisy actually developed the film along with her husband. It centers around Daisy's character, Annette, who was basically left behind in the family after her daughter was cast in a film starring a pretty famous actress. Annette's husband, he took care of the daughter while Annette's character was at home taking care of their baby.
And then something was sort of going on between the husband and the film actress that was starring alongside their daughter.
Like over time, the repulsiveness of the husband sort of unravels, and their family life sort of turns into turmoil. And then at the end, there was a pretty significant plot twist that I did not see coming. Like, I knew that there was supposed to be a plot twist in the film, and I was like,
what could possibly happen?
But yeah, love Daisy. Okay, so other actresses that I was obsessed with in 2024. Julie Andrews. I made a video about her as well, a whole video dedicated to her, so if you want to check that out. And I watched Mary Poppins for the first time. It was so joyful, so whimsical, and the musical numbers were amazing. Mary Poppins as a character, I love her. The little vanity and also how chic she is, but also her warmth, her tenderness, her kindness. I also watched Victor/Victoria, which I also mentioned in that Julie Andrews video as a whole. It was so thrilling to watch. The premise was really interesting. It was about Julie Andrews' character who pretends to be a man pretending to be a woman. That is enough to hook me in already. Like, that is fascinating. There are a bunch of twists and turns, and Julie's character, Victor/Victoria, really compelling to watch. Okay, the final actress who I watched a lot of was Jodie Foster. The classic Silence of the Lambs creeped the heck out of me. And I also watched Contact, which I had to analyze for my film class at school. So Jodie plays a scientist, an astronomer who discovers like extraterrestrial signals and who investigates on that in this sort of like male-dominated sort of industry, which is a real pretty infuriating. Like, there's a bunch of characters that I just wanted to so it is a science fiction, and it also gets pretty like existential towards the end. And the more I analyzed it, the more I loved it, actually. Like, I didn't quite understand it, all it's trying to say the first time I watched it, but then as I had to analyze it, I also watched like other people's analysis and read like articles on it. As I just peeled off all of these layers of meaning the film encapsulated, and how it's ultimately not about aliens, it's about the human race. It's really thought-provoking. And it also deals with like the debate of sort of science and religion. Can those two coexist? How do these coexist in our world? And I don't know, but it just sort of like raises more questions than it answers. At first I didn't really get it because I felt like it went sort of nowhere, the film. Like, you at the end of the day, you don't really know what happened. But then as I analyze it more and more, it just really felt really eye-opening. People describe it on Letterboxd as sort of like a predecessor to Interstellar, like this walk so that Interstellar could run. And I do really get where it's coming from. So if you like Interstellar and just science fiction and just philosophy and human and I don't know, Jodie in general, then watch Contact. Okay, so an important factor that happened in 2024 that really contributed to the diversification of the films I've been watching. I started the IB curriculum, and I chose film for IB. Because of that, I watched a lot of films that were quite out of my comfort zone, like quite, and it also really introduced me to like new obsessions, new realms in the cinematic universe, you know? And so, in the film course, we watched Jaws, which jump scared me like 10 times, and then Silence of the Lambs, which I was just basically like this, watching it. and also Alien, which had me like this watching it. As much as I love The Class, I get tormented pretty often in that class. And then we sort of steered away from like thrillers and horrors, and we watched Blazing Saddles, which was honestly such a joy. I had a blast watching it. A bunch of messy but also intentional fun. And another fun film we watched was Hot Fuzz, which is where Simon Pegg plays a police officer who gets assigned to this rural village in the north of England, and then start to uncover a bunch of like hidden truths about the seemingly peaceful and crimeless village community. Edgar Wright's signature like gearing up sequences, oh my god, so cool and exhilarating. Letterboxd stats, I think there's a section of highs and lows. Over the garden wall, I should continue that. The lowest average, oh my god, Rise of Skywalker. Somehow Palpatine returned. And I don't know why there are some TV shows that are on Letterboxd and some that are not. Like if there is, then I'll just log it. Okay, and then the last section of this video, I'm going to talk about absolute gems of films that I discovered last year. My favorite films that I saw for the first time, that are like standalone films that don't belong to any of the categories that were aforementioned. So, first of all, Carol! I read The Price of Salt. So one thing I really loved about the book, which I actually have right here, I don't know how to describe it, but the writing is really atmospheric, and you really feel like you're moving with Therese, the main character, because the book is in her point of view, Rooney's character, the film. The film really amplified, I feel like, the book's like atmospheric nature. The overall like vibe of the film, like really misty and rainy. There's a lot of shots from behind glass and windows and stuff, like you're trying to see through, which is also reflective of the character's like mental states, of especially Therese trying to navigate through these encounters that she has never experienced before meeting Carol. And the music is also, I love the music. It's like really what's that movement, like impressionist? And also fits like the hustle and bustle of New York City, but then the sparks that is Carol and Therese within this mess. I don't know, I just love it. The Holdovers. I love the premise of it, how it's about like a student, a history professor, and a cook of the school kitchen who were stranded all together during the Christmas holidays in the high school together. It's just such a beautiful setup, such a beautiful like coming together of these three individuals with such different backgrounds, such different characters, such different beliefs and worldviews, how their loneliness juxtaposed with the traditional like joy and celebration of Christmas, and how they eventually found joy from within each other. It's like a warm hug by the end, I feel like. And I also finally watched The Shawshank Redemption in 20. It is pretty much a masterpiece. I love the themes about hope. Oh, Begin Again. So I watched that film actually on my birthday because I felt like I wanted to be inspired at the fresh new age of 16. So it tells the story of this songwriter who goes through this really heartbreaking breakup and then encounters this other character who is also going through some familial trauma, and they work together to create a new album together. It's a simple story, but I loved the songs in the film. They're all like ruminations on life, and among these songs, I guess my favorite would be like the main soundtrack of the film, which is Lost Stars. We're all just lost stars trying to light up the dark. Like how beautiful is that? Good Will Hunting. Robin Williams, his characters like from Good Will Hunting, and also Mr. Keating from Dead Poets Society, some of the like best cinematic mentors ever. Saving Mr. Banks. It centers around the author of Mary Poppins, P.L. Travers, and just how the film version of Mary Poppins was realized. It also explores P.L. Travers, like her relationship with her father, and the structure of the film. There's a lot of like flashbacks in the film. The way in which the flashbacks were dispersed like throughout the main storyline in the present. It was just really clever, and I never felt like they were lingering too long in the flashbacks or like vice versa. And it also made me really appreciate the author, P.L. Travers, and her story. Nothing Like a Dame. So we all know about Maggie Smith's passing last year. I just sort of like watched it to like pay tribute to Maggie Smith. So like these four wonderful dames, they had a really extensive conversation together. They just talked about their career, life in general, the film industry. Like, I feel like their lives are so full. These four really, strong and witty, funny, wise women together. Oh, and finally, Anatomy of a Fall. Another movie that was popular for the 2024 Oscars, which was also snubbed, by the way. Anatomy of a Fall was one of the first new films I watched in 2024. I was just like totally engrossed within it, within the first minutes of it. One of the most significant parts which made the film amazing was the acting. Sandra Hüller, oh my god, her like really real and raw performance was just like riveting. Just as how March of 2024 was like embellished by Julie Andrews' magic, January 2024 just like unfolded like under the shadow of Anatomy of a Fall, you know? Oh, and then acting aside, the themes that the film tackled, like morality and truth. A lot of people talk about the ambiguity of the film. The death is basically just an instigator for the overarching like character study that the film is trying to accomplish, and it did accomplish. The director Justine Triet, she also described how the subjectivity of opinion that is explored in the film was really interesting. The way time destroys the objectivity of a situation and separates people between thoughts and truths, which was, I don't know, it just really pulled an unlikely subject into the rabbit hole. And yeah, those are my favorite sort of standalone films that I watched for the first time in 2024. My film watching goal of 2025, guys. First of all, watch more films. Actually dedicate more time to films, and especially TV shows. And then second of all, watch more international films from all around the world. And I did pretty well in 2023 in terms of this, but just watch more Chinese films, like watch more films that are made from where I come from. Like, this is so embarrassing. That was my 2024 in film. And I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope this formatting is a bit more entertaining. And I hope you also had a good year watching films. And if you want me to watch something, please comment down below. I wish everyone a peaceful 2025. Bye!